Hello and welcome to God Daily, your daily Bible study. Let's continue our examination of Genesis. The authorship of the book of Genesis is a subject of debate among scholars. Traditionally, the authorship has been attributed to Moses, as he is considered the author of the Pentateuch or the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. However, the authorship of the Pentateuch has been the subject of much scholarly discussion and speculation, and there are different views regarding the authorship of Genesis. Some scholars believe that Genesis is a compilation of multiple sources, including oral traditions, written texts, and edited materials, and was compiled and edited over a period of centuries by various editors and redactors. This theory is known as the documentary hypothesis, or the GDP theory, and it suggests that different authors or groups of authors contributed to the composition of Genesis and the rest of the Pentateuch. Other scholars reject the documentary hypothesis and argue that Moses was the primary author of Genesis and the Pentateuch, and that he received the information directly from God through divine revelation. This view is known as the Mosaic authorship theory. Overall, the authorship of the book of Genesis remains a topic of ongoing scholarly debate and investigation. Today's verse of topic is Genesis 1:13, which states, "And there was evening and there was morning the third day." This verse is part of the creation account found in the first book of Genesis, describing how God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. In Genesis 1:12, God creates the vegetation and plants that bear fruit with seeds according to their kinds, while in Genesis 1:13, the narrative continues, stating that there was evening and morning, marking the end of the third day. Together, these two verses provide a complete picture of the third day of creation, emphasizing the importance of God's creative power and his attention to detail. The mention of plants bearing fruit with seeds in Genesis 1:12 highlights God's intention for these plants to be a source of sustenance and regeneration, while the reference to evening and morning in Genesis 1:13 emphasizes the order and structure of God's creative work. By linking these two verses, the author of Genesis highlights the interconnectedness of God's creative acts, demonstrating that each day of creation builds upon the previous one and ultimately points toward the completion of God's perfect plan. Historically, this passage has been seen as an affirmation of God's sovereignty over all of creation. It emphasizes that God is the source of all life and that all things exist because of his creative power. It is also significant because it sets the stage for the rest of the creation account, demonstrating that each day of creation builds upon the previous one. From a theological perspective, we can learn several things from this passage. First, we see that God is a God of order and purpose. Everything he creates has a specific function and place in his plan. Second, we see that God is a God of provision. He created plants that bear fruit to provide sustenance for his creatures. Finally, we see that God is a God of beauty. The plants and vegetation that he created are not only functional but also aesthetically pleasing. We can apply these theological truths to our lives by recognizing that God is still the sovereign creator of all things. We should trust in his provision for our daily needs and appreciate the beauty of his creation. Additionally, we should strive to be good stewards of the resources he has given us, recognizing that all of creation belongs to him and that we are called to care for it. Genesis 1:13 is a brief but significant passage in the creation account of Genesis 1. It highlights God's sovereignty, order, provision, and beauty, and teaches us important theological truths that we can apply to our daily lives.